Welcome to the Human Error Roll-Up Report, brought to you from your colleagues at Human Performance Tools, LLC, via the Human Error News Network. I'm thrilled you're joining us. What we've done here is synthesize 49 of our deep dive investigations into a single, high-impact explainer for decision makers. So if you're managing risk or operations, this is the master narrative on exactly why our systems fail, and more importantly, how we can rebuild them.
Here is a quick look at our agenda for today's explainer. We're going to cover the human error illusion, the hidden costs of a blame culture, and the anatomy of system failure, before wrapping up with a proactive implementation roadmap and how to measure true system resilience. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the human error illusion. Is it really the root cause? Now, if there is one single takeaway you get from this entire report, let it be this. Human error is almost never the root cause. It's a symptom. It's literally just a flashing red arrow pointing to much deeper, hidden, systemic flaws. You see, when we label a massive organizational failure as just human error, we're essentially giving ourselves permission to look the other way while the underlying disease just keeps spreading. To really grasp the scale of this illusion, just think about the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. We are talking about an estimated $5.2 billion catastrophe. And while human nature always makes us look for a culprit right in the moment of chaos, this disaster was actually triggered by an invisible installation error made years prior. It was completely hidden by procedural blind spots. The real failure wasn't a sudden mistake. It was baked right into the infrastructure long before the bridge actually fell. Or check out this staggering statistic from Bellsoft. 62% of container security mistakes are routinely pinned on human error. For a lot of managers, they see that and say, case closed. But for us, that's exactly where the investigation starts. Just writing off 62% of errors to individuals is an incredibly easy answer, but it completely buries the environmental pressures, the impossible deadlines, the cognitive overload that are genuinely setting these developers up to fail.
Which brings us to Section 2, the hidden cost of blame, or what we call the pointing finger trap.
So after any failure, you are faced with a fundamental fork in the road. You can either point a finger and create a reactive culture of fear, or you can actually search for a lesson and build a proactive learning culture to fix the system. You absolutely cannot do both. The exact second you decide to punish an individual, you slam the door on any chance of discovering where your process is actually broken. Let's look at the real-world financial and human cost of choosing blame. Take healthcare. Punishing frontline nurses for safety errors actually drives up the 250,000 inpatient falls happening every single year. Why? Because fear stops people from reporting real systemic hazards. When your staff is terrified of retaliation, they hide their near misses. So the broken system stays broken, and those root flaws remain completely hidden. We see the exact same thing happening over in biopharma. When 50% of process deviations are just written off as operator mistakes, it proves you don't have a personnel problem at all. You have a system design problem. A culture that constantly points the finger at human error is person-dependent, right? It's not process-dependent. And honestly, regulators do not want to see person-dependent systems. Okay, so how do we actually fix this? That takes us to Section 3, Anatomy of System Failure. Let's look under the hood. If you're in risk management, you're likely familiar with the Swiss cheese model. Think of every safety measure you have as a slice of cheese. Now, each slice has holes in it, weaknesses like software bugs, staffing shortages, or confusing manuals. Usually it's fine, but a disaster happens when those hidden weaknesses across multiple layers perfectly align, creating a straight trajectory for failure, like the mix of a distracted controller, staff shortages, and bad radios we investigated at LaGuardia. And this model beautifully explains the domino effect we saw in the bridge disaster. Domino 1, years prior, an invisible wire installation error. Domino 2, just 3 days prior, a flawed visual inspection completely misses the defect. Domino 3, total failure when power fails and the emergency procedures are totally ambiguous. Every single layer of protection failed in sequence. We also saw this deeply entrenched in the Greek rail disaster at Tempe. A single station master was blamed for that horrific crash, but investigators found that this conveniently covered up 15.6 billion euros in illegal state aids, alongside years of lawful but awful austerity cuts. They had stripped the railways of funding, which normalized a culture of running high-speed trains without automated safety controls. And here is a crazy twist for you. Sometimes our intended solutions actually become the new holes in the cheese. Look at maritime lifeboat hooks.
The original issue was lifeboats getting stuck, so engineers designed a highly complex release hook. The unintended result? 32% of all maritime component failures are now traced back to that exact new mechanism. Over-engineering a fix just created a brand new human performance trap because it was way too complex for a human to operate under extreme stress.
So knowing all this, let's talk about the ROI of getting it right in Section 4, Proactive Safety Implementation Roadmap.
You can't just slap a Band-Aid on these things. We observed a massive global biopharma player implement this exact 4-phase strategy. They shifted their beliefs to a blame-free culture, totally redesigned their documents to be human-centered, physically built error prevention into their lines, and finally set up a dedicated center of competence to sustain it.
Now, what I find really fascinating is Phase 2. A huge chunk of their success came simply from redesigning standard operating procedures for the human brain. Think about it. When you hand an operator a giant wall of dense text, you trigger cognitive overload. But by targeting 30% white space, using short sentences, and grouping things into clear visual blocks, you physically prevent someone from accidentally skipping a step.
The return on investment for this system-first approach is completely undeniable. Across 13 global sites, they saw a 40% reduction in overall human error deviations. And when they applied those design rules to their documents, a 90% drop in documentation errors. Let that sink in. 90% of those errors literally vanished just because they made the paperwork easier for a human being to process.
To maintain that kind of long-term success, we have to change how we measure things. That's Section 5, Measuring True System Resilience.
If you want your organization to actually be resilient, you have to stop looking in the rearview mirror. You've got to ditch the useless lagging indicators like accident counts or compliance paperwork. Those only tell you what failed yesterday. You need to pivot to proactive leading indicators. Track your shop floor coaching sessions. Track prevented issue reports, where an operator catches a flaw right before it breaks something. That is your early warning system for tomorrow.
So, here's your ultimate mission as a decision maker. When we stop hunting for scapegoats and start hunting for system flaws, everything changes. We transform our companies from reactive traps that just repeat the same mistakes into highly resilient learning cultures.
I'm going to leave you with this final challenge today. Right now, somewhere in your company, your next big failure is quietly leaving clues in your processes or your equipment. So when that inevitable error happens, what's your system going to do? Are you building a system that assigns blame or a system that protects your people? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Stay vigilant, look past the error, and let's go fix those systems.